Okay, Sam's Bulldog is back on Hunter Maats. Been spending the whole summer on Professor Jordan Peterson, with occasional diversions to Michael Brooks at the Majority Report. Peterson's been taking up a hell of a lot of my time. There's a lot of content there, and he's a dangerous individual. So I've really been focusing on him. But of course, I reached out to Hunter because I needed to change of pace and asked him to throw up some new content on YouTube because I've been looking out for it. So I could have fun destroying his non sequiturs and nonsense. And he liked that. He tweeted me back, and he said he'd be happy to help. Tasteless Opinion, guy who follows me on Twitter and vice versa, sent me a video of a podcast, Anti-Theism versus Atheism, with Nightmare Fuel and Hunter Maats, streamed live July 21, 2017. I am only going to focus on the 9 times that Hunter Maats brought up Sam Harris and everything he got wrong there. He may have gotten something right, Hunter. I mean, you may have improved from 0 batting average, but we'll see. And again, this is only Hunter speaking about Sam. Here we go.
Degrees. So I think that's part of the big problem with sort of the Sam Harrisness of it all is that, you know, if you're trying to get people to not be cultish and to not organize themselves in various ways, then you have a huge problem. See what has happened with the new atheist movement. They've managed to create a cult. And it's a cult of personality around Sam.
Reese, do you want to respond?
So,
okay, first of all, the word cult obviously has negative connotations. But you're insinuating that Sam Harris and the new atheists are against getting together, groups of people? No. I mean, that's absurd. I could quote him. We'll still have reason, quote, we'll still have reasons to gather in beautiful sanctuaries. In other words, we don't have churches anymore and mosques and synagogues. We'd still build nice buildings to get together for those important times in life. So he's not against that at all. Groups of people with religious infatuation and harmful views, he's against. So here's a definition. First of all, Hunter, stop using that word so much. Okay, if everything's a cult, everything's a cult. Okay, I mean, here's a good working definition. There are secrets at the top, right? So Scientology is a cult because when you join, they don't tell you all the secrets. You got to pay them and meet all these standards, and then they let you in on the big secrets. Obviously, quote-unquote religions do not work that way. They're happy to tell you everything. I mean, do I need to say that if you go to a Christian church and say you're interested about the miracles of Jesus and so on, and you want to get involved, they'd tell you everything. They'd hope you come back. They'd give you books, and I mean, so that's a good working distinction for you there, buddy. Okay? So let's go to the next time he mentions him.
you know, the views that, for example, and, you know, obviously, like you saying, oh, I don't particularly identify with Sam Harris. Well, you know, I can go, I mean, you know, look at the Muslim community. There's a huge community. There are lots of imams. And, you know, any one imam you name, people aren't necessarily going to identify with that imam or this imam. And the same thing with Catholics, you know, versus Protestants. I mean, there's endless denominations in atheism or anti-theism, just as there is in...
Endless denominations of atheism. You might want to revisit that statement.
Any belief system about the supernatural. But, if you look at, for example, Sam Harris is one of the leading figures. He does have a group of people around him who are strongly committed to them. I have had the pleasure of, acquiring their ire and being attacked by them. So I've met many of them. And, the point is that there is a certain dogma that Sam Harris pushes out, and that dogma is related to the rational agent theory bad assumptions of economics, which you agree are bad assumptions.
Can we explain the rational?
Okay. Yes, you have gotten a lot of ire from Sam Harris, people that actually read and listen to Sam Harris, Hunter. And the reason is you get his views all wrong, now, intentionally or not. That whole thing about listening to imams and all that was absurd. It's always the texts, right? It's always the holy books. They have the final say, whether they like it or not. And whether, killing for cheating on your wife is actually carried out, and so on. He says Sam Harris pushes out dogma? The dogma of rational something? What? No, Hunter, no. In the strongest terms, no. He is an anti-dogmatist. There is no dogma in the philosophy of Sam Harris. He's open-minded on everything. Okay, and he's not controversial either. He's controversial in how concise he is, and how cutting, and how logical, and how easily he can expose nonsense. But to say that he's dogmatic is just a lie. Okay? By no word definition, we know what dogma means. If you don't, I'll do a separate video on it. Stop saying that. That's why you're getting attacked. I mean, you come out for rational thought and rational inquiry and skepticism and science, and you're accused of being a dogmatic. I mean, the guy's a meditator and an ex-Buddhist hippie with dreadlocks or whatever those things, Keta or whatever they're called that the Indians wear. Indian people from India, that is. Totally wrong.
Well, you're talking rational choice theory. I don't know exactly how that relates to religion and forming groups and whatnot.
Well, what I'm saying is that, rational agent theory is a prediction
of
human nature.
Yeah,
right,
you're
it's a
saying
prediction
people
about reality.
Rationally. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So,
and the point is, it's a
pals with
dogma that Sam Harris pushes out, and that dogma is
this because people have reason when it comes about.
He then goes on to mention. He switches to economics, which is not a science. As Sam has said publicly multiple times, it's struggling to be a science. There are so many unknown variables, and it's so complex. It's like the weather, that we are still subjected to things that happened, like that happened in 2008, that come quote-unquote out of nowhere. They're certainly, forensically, they didn't come out of nowhere. But, and Sam isn't an economist, and and he's made the distinction, between hard science and things like economics. I mean, a point not worth making. Okay, speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. Okay, economics. You're in theory already. Okay. Let's move on to he mentions the new atheists up next. So that was just pointless. Okay. subject changing non sequitur nonsense.
From the culture of science, and I had never really thought about Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins or any of these guys. And then I had this experience of teaching at Oaks Christian, which was a school that was set up to teach the controversy, really to discredit evolution. And I came to realize that a huge part of their arsenal in doing that was pointing to the Four Horsemen and saying, look at these guys, they're so self-righteous, there are so many things they don't understand about Christianity or the value it produces or the positive contributions.
Okay, there's so much they don't understand about Christianity and so on. I mean, dude, I'll say it for the millionth time. Evolution has been going on, as I hope you know, for 3.5 billion years, perhaps longer, on this planet. It would have happened if we were here or not, or we know it or not. Right? Christianity, religious dogma, etc., is made up. There's no basis in reality. It's fiction. Okay? And to use the word self-righteous, I mean, justify that. What do you mean? You have a personality, you don't like their personalities, like Richard Dawkins. People say they don't like Richard Dawkins because he sounds snooty and all of that. Okay, that's fine. I mean, if it's a personality thing, I get it. I mean, we all have people that could speak truth to power all day long and we won't listen because we don't like them. That's fine, but you're characterizing public educators as being self-righteous. Now, as a scientist who's interested in facts only and falsifiable information and observational information and so on, I think you know why they denigrate made-up stories and wish thinking. That does not make you self-righteous, my friend. Sorry. Let's see if he says anything else here, and then we'll move on.
It does. And they were essentially using that tiny number of people to discredit and to paint this stereotype of scientists that does not reflect my direct experience in the majority of scientists. And this is...
Oh, he says no. Oh, okay. He's saying that they were using them, that he wasn't saying this. I apologize, Hunter, that he wasn't saying this, that they were saying this.
This is where, the Dunbar number becomes so important, because
I don't know what that
humans
is.
have to stereotype. We form impressions of what other cultures are based on tiny amounts of information. And so, part of my reason for calling out Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins is to say, you don't realize this if you're in academia or if you're in science, but this small group of individuals are the reason why, a large part of why, religious people have this anti-science attitude. Because there's a small number of people who continue to drive this narrative that religion and science are incompatible.
Okay, you're blaming scientists for popularizing science, which has gotten us everything we've ever had in human history, I would argue. The scientific method, problem solving, recognition of reality, and that you have to work within that framework, or things go pear-shaped, as the Brits say, pretty quickly. And then he throws in the old chestnut. These guys are popularizing that science and religion are incompatible. How dare they? They're the most incompatible things imaginable. Science, to quote Sam, is the place where we get really rigorous about trying to eliminate our personal biases, trying desperately not to fool ourselves, publicly admitting when you're wrong, having others read your work, validate your work, retest your work, repeatable, falsifiable information, and so on. Science is rewarded by failure. We are rewarded by the failures of science because the next experiment may work. And I'm not pontificating, but it's not even just about saving lives and rocket ships, is it? It's literally everything. Okay? The skill to feed America, was Malthus centuries ago said we'd never be able to feed ourselves and so on, and the planet will overpopulate, and it hasn't materialized thanks to science, technology, improving yields on farms, and so on. Okay, where does all this come from? The Bible, myth stories, flying Jewish carpenter, and so on, or scientific inquiry. So don't dare say that they're compatible. They're compatible if you don't ever think about it. Okay, that's how Nobel Prize winners, Jewish, Muslim, Christian Nobel Prize winners in the sciences, believers, exist and persist. Okay? But let me tell you something about those Nobel Prize winning believing scientists. They know where the line is. And there's a line. It's bright red. And they are extremely careful when they talk about their science. And they readily disclosed that their faith is faith. Okay? In other words, they acknowledge, largely, there are exceptions, they acknowledge the incompatibility. Those that do not and claim there isn't, I would have to, depending on the belief, of course, but if they're extravagant, unjustified claims, they're not being honest. How could they be? Just call it faith, belief without evidence. See what else he says here.
Is that something that we're really going to lay at the feet of the four horsemen, though?
Well,
an anti-science attitude has always been prevalent within religious cultures.
Oh, no, it has not, my friend. I mean, so firstly, let's go back to the origins of science, right? So science is really about changing your beliefs in light of evidence and testing your beliefs and all of that. Well, if you look for who is the founder of science, and it's always problematic to pick out a singular individual, it's Ibn Haytham, who was a Muslim in the 800s. And then that process was further formalized.
All right. I said I wasn't going to comment on his comments on Islam unless they're directly related to Sam, and I'm going to keep to that because I'll, frankly, pull out my hair. And I don't want to. Next.
Possible. Yeah, I think I am. Okay, is it better?
Yeah, no, you're better now.
Okay, so sorry about that.
That's okay.
I like that quote. I think that's very interesting because at its core, and at its origins, religion is and fills the void of what science is now. It was people attempting to use stories and mythology to explain the world around them that they had no way of really understanding.
By the way, this nightmare fuel guy, not just saying this because we fight from the same trench, but a reasonable equanimous guy, I would have been a hell of a lot more aggressive, of course, stylistically, with a lot of what Hunter has said here. But, check these guys out. This is Friend Ed is the host, and cool guys, man, cool guys. But, if Hunter had just done his reading or agreed to be honest, it would have been a lot better.
On better actual ways of describing it, plausible ways, because, and the main difference is, and kind of obvious, that they told these stories without any testing, without any evidence. These were simply things that they believed, and it makes for a nice story, but it's certainly no way to run your civilization.
So, Reese, can I float something by you? So, is part of science is neuroscience, right? It's sort of understanding how the human mind works, right?
No, the human brain, not the human mind. There's a difference, believe it or not. I don't know why I'm taking issue with that.
Right?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So there's Sam Harris.
Here it comes.
Did this study in it was an MRI study, and they put people in an MRI and they presented them with things which challenged or threatened their beliefs, and it caused them to essentially react in the same way. An intellectual threat was perceived in the same way as a...
Let me correct you. What he did was, if you're talking about his own research, so you're getting this wrong, hooked up subjects to an fMRI, asked them questions like, showed them things like 2 plus 2 equals 4, 2 plus 2 equals 5, and then showed them things, watch the brain, and then showed them statements like, it's moral to murder children, or it's immoral to murder children, for example. In other words, strict, simple math, what's the brain look like, and then heavily laden moralistic statements, and watch the brain as well, and the brain reacted the same way in a sense. Correct, not correct, in a black and white kind of way in both scenarios, whether it was logic, math, if you will, or a moral statement. Okay, so you're getting it wrong. You're getting the details wrong again.
Physical threat, right? And so, this is part of my point with the whole approach that people like Sam Harris take to dealing with people's unscientific beliefs, is that what they're really doing is endlessly just provoking them and making them literally feel like they're physically under threat. So
Sam Harris is provoking believers and making them think they're physically under threat. Physically under threat. Who is physically threatening anybody? Forget about Sam Harris. Where, anywhere, in a liberal democracy, mind you, I'm not talking about Waziristan here, that people are physically under threat for their religious beliefs or any beliefs. Absurd. Absolutely absurd. Look at the hate crime statistics, which are near nothing and almost entirely populated by anti-Semitism. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
That's what his own science supports. And he should look at his data and say, man, based on what I now know, how can I be a more effective communicator? He doesn't necessarily...
Okay, so you're provoking believers. First of all, we all should feel like we have a duty to be intellectually honest. I feel that way. When is it valuable? I mean, look who I'm asking. When is it valuable to be dishonest? I mean, it's this guy. I mean, I don't know what he's talking about. So scientists, for mentioning that there are black holes and wormholes and electrons, the two-split experiment, an electron can be in the same place at two different times, apparently. I mean, that's provoking people? Are we to shut down the classics library because in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment there was a murder? Or what's the famous Madame Bovary? there was a lot of sex and horseback riding and cheating on husbands and shit going on there. That's not moral. You know, you're provoking puritanical views here. I mean, stop, dude.
Certainly do that. Meanwhile, right, you know, if you look at clearly whatever strategy, you know, Christians are using for spreading their ideas, you know, you say it's a failed science, but science is about describing reality. And clearly...
That's for sure. Christianity isn't, nor any of the others. I love how everybody in English speakers in the West, you know, whether it's Jordan Peterson or Hunter Maats or anybody, it's always from the Christian this, Christian that. I mean, what about 3,000 years ago in the Levant, or 20,000 years ago? Or my favorite is Hinduism. I want everybody who talks about religion in America to only mention Hindu theology, okay, and the perspective on it. Because first of all, I'd like to learn more about it. Its trappings are incredibly beautiful. I happen to like the people, the food. So let's just, everybody who condemns scientists for their science and their intolerance for shitty ideas, only talk Hinduism. You'd sound more informed.
The things that the Christians understand about the realities of human behavior is working because they still have 1 billion plus adherents.
No. Another classic. Oh, well, a ton of people believe it, so it's a success. Really? You want to revisit that one, my friend? You want me to do another video for an hour off the top of my head how absurd that statement just was? Okay.
Which is a lot more than the 4 horsemen. So,
I mean, he's like, well, Christianity might be it may not be, you know, dealing in reality, but there's something there because it's been around so long, and there's I think it's 2.5 billion Christian, or 2 billion, slightly outnumbering by 500 million, I think, the Muslim population on planet Earth. And then at the end, it's a lot more popular than the 4 horsemen. I mean, who cares? Okay? I'll say it again. Since 1953, something like 53% of the U.S. population rejects the immutable, undeniable reality of biological evolution. And to quote Sam Harris, yet biology still thrives. We are the #1 tech country in the world. We have biotech. Wish it was bigger and better. That's irrelevant, right? It matters what the facts are. I mean, if the whole world was into honor killing, would you talk about its inherent value because there's so many subscribers? I mean, dude, terrible.
the question is whose beliefs about human nature and how you get people to change their minds and how you grow a movement are more realistic and more in line with Sam's own scientific evidence. Is it the Christians or is it Sam Harris?
Well, I
mean, I don't understand what the hell that meant. Science is science, dude. It stands alone in a very real sense. There's science and there's everything else. Okay? It's not the end all. Okay? It's just incredible.
The idea that when I put forward the idea that Sam Harris was a scientific hypocrite because he wanted other people to change their minds in light of scientific evidence, but he refused to do it, how did his followers react? Well,
a scientific hypocrite because when he wants other people to change their beliefs, but he won't. What are you talking about? I mean, I could play that whole clip. Believe me, there's nothing there. Okay? I mean, a hypocrite about what? What are you talking about? Direct quote. I don't want to be wrong any longer than I have to be. Okay? Now, he says that a lot. You might think that's lip service, but you have to point out where he's actually being a hypocrite about science. Okay? Science gets us most, if not all, of what we want, and the solution to the world's problems is more science and better science, and less dogma, because dogma is restrictive. I mean, I don't understand what's hypocritical here. I never hear the guy be a hypocrite. Okay? Embarrassing, dude. Embarrassing.
The footrest. And I think what's staggering about the new atheists is how quickly, in just 10 years, they've managed to achieve levels of self-righteousness and dogmatism that it takes most religions centuries to achieve.
The fuck are you talking about? Self-righteousness? They speak for science. He speaks for science. I mean, if it's a personality thing, whatever. You don't like people because of the way they look and sound and so on. That's fine. We all have personal taste. But you're saying that scientists and Sam Harris and his buddies have such hubris, and their beliefs are so unshakable that they pale in comparison to the world's great faiths. I mean, there's nothing honest about that statement, Hunter. Zero. Absurd is the only word that comes to mind. I'm at a loss of words that you said dogmatism again and all this again with scientists. They're fans of science, and guess what? The next theory that comes along, if it's correct and validated, they change their thinking and move on. That's not what religions do. Okay, you mentioned moments ago that get people to change their minds, and religions don't do that. They tell you how to think and how to act, and what's going to happen to your corpse, and where to put your dick, if you want God to love you and all. I mean, are you kidding me? Jesus, dude. Horrendous.
Reese, I don't think that we should give so much scientific credit to founders of religion for being good con men. Like, people would understand how you would sell things to a crowd. You're actually really making a good pitch for anti-theism. Yes, religions are good at spreading and getting started and gaining so many adherents. That's part of the problem.
But when it do,
it's so many people to believe in bad.
Again, that's the reasonable nightmare fuel.
So yes, actually we do know this, Reese, based on your own standard of looking at the scientific evidence. You just may not have looked at that evidence for yourself yet, but I'm happy to send you a copy of the relevant biology.
Is there a lot of Islam stuff in the new Hendrick book? Because I haven't.
I had to throw that in. That, Hunter, you said relevant biology, quoting Sam Harris when he took you down in 11 seconds on the Joe Rogan program about, quote, he doesn't have his shit together. Half of what he said is wrong. Half the relevant biology is wrong, etc. Again, I'm not going to quote on all the other silliness here. I just want to say that you haven't, Hunter, you haven't disappointed me. You mentioned Sam Harris 9 times, and then quoted him with the relevant biology for the 10th, and over an hour and 28 minutes. And everything you said, well, not everything, nearly everything you said was wrong. Why? You need, as Sam calls, conversational pressure. You need to be put in a box and be made to defend these silly, outlandish, scientists are just as bad as religionists. It's all just a cult. Everything's the same. Who cares? Whatever. It's nonsense, dude. And, if you don't like personality, say so. That's fine. I can dig it. But don't lie about their records. And I am calling it lying. If I'm wrong about it being lies, and you're just misinformed or confused, or maybe I could help you out there. But I think we both know that's not what's going on. You are attempting to get some of that limelight. Nothing wrong with that. You could say I'm doing the same thing off the new atheist science and the public conversation around religion. But again, intentionally getting views wrong of others helps nobody. So after you respond to this video, if you'd like to, personally or whatever, I'm not suggesting you spend hours on YouTube doing it, you might want to noodle why you're doing this. There's ways to attack Sam Harris and the new atheists. It's not easy, but there are ways to do it. And you haven't found any. All you've done is marginalize yourself, because eventually people get around to knowing the details, perhaps. Those that are interested do. And you will fall by the wayside. So, and no one will listen. I've said this 2 months ago. No one's going to listen to anything you say. I'll speak for myself. Once I find out somebody's lying about the public views of someone else, it's over for me. Okay? People make mistakes. I probably made mistakes on this video, for goodness sakes. That's fine. But when you see a persistent campaign of non sequiturs and rhetorical attacks that go nowhere, and blatantly erroneous views on subjects that Sam and the new atheists have discussed and written about publicly for going on 10 or 15 years. There's no excuse, and that's why I'm back. I will be keeping an eye on you, Hunter Maats. My moral lessons, my appeal to the golden rule, my appeal to intellectual honesty have obviously gone unheeded. I knew you listened to me, and I know you'll listen to this, and I want you to be better, and I want everybody to be better, and you become better by being honest, at least about the views of others. Disagree all you want. But Sam Harris is alive. He's a person. He's got a family and so on. And you're just one more liar. Don't be.